What's the impact of a negative applicant experience? How can you improve your hiring process when thousands are applying? Hear this and more from senior recruiter Jamie Davis. Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, award-winning author and social innovation researcher. We're your hosts of the Culture Profit Podcast.
Your place for purposeful company culture strategy.
Learn from HR pros, executives, and thought leaders how to prioritize profits by prioritizing people.
This episode is sponsored by Mobrium, the best friend of forward-thinking HR leaders, helping you strengthen your employer reputation as a reflection of your real culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com.
Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us.
We have a painfully obvious topic today. What's wrong with recruiting and hiring practices right now? While hundreds of thousands of workers have been laid off since the COVID-19 pandemic, many companies have also slowed hiring. This combination has created a surplus of talent for some roles and industries. Joining us today is an exceptionally talented senior recruiter who was laid off 6 months ago. With a depth of knowledge about hiring best practices, she has experienced the other side of the recruiting while applying for countless jobs. So let's welcome Jamie Davis.
Hi, guys.
So good to have you.
Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Jamie. And for everyone listening, a little context of how this conversation got started. So about 10 days ago, I saw a post on LinkedIn from Jamie. We're not connected. The post was 4 hours old and had over 15,000 reactions just at that time. So Jamie, tell us about the post. Like, what were you talking about?
Yeah, so I was talking about, my experience being on the other side of the desk, as it were, and really, seeing a time in recruiting as a job searcher that I've never seen before. And so just kind of talking about, what I had experienced, and also then reintroducing my skill set and what I am able to bring to a company as far as talent acquisition goes. That post definitely has gotten a lot of attention and created great opportunities like this. So, I think it's doing what it was meant to, and really bringing this to the forefront of kind of what's going on in talent acquisition.
Man, that's crazy. And how many people have seen that post now? It's been like a week and a half. Like, what's the reach?
So at this point, that post has over 500,000 unique impressions or views. And it's at over 5,300 actual reactions. And wow. Just for additional stats, over 350 comments and over 350 reposts. Whoa. So it's gotten a lot of attention.
So it's clear you are not alone.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that desire to work right now, and they're resonating with your message about being frustrated.
Yeah, to me that seems like it's a very relatable topic for a lot of people that they can relate through your post.
Yeah, I think especially because since, I guess probably Q4 of last year, but especially, since the beginning of 2023, there have been a lot of layoffs, specifically in tech and specifically in talent acquisition and human resources. So it's been interesting because there are a lot of really great and talented people in these spaces who would run really excellent hiring processes, but are not working. And so it's been interesting to see how companies kind of are seeming to view talent acquisition as more of a service rather than a partnership. And it's definitely led to some, I think, breakdowns in the process for sure.
Definitely. We know you're a very experienced recruiter. You have a wealth of knowledge. You've had a lot of experience at different companies. And now you're also an experienced applicant with the past 6 months. So give us some highlights of what this last 6 months has looked like with the job search.
Yeah. So I guess kind of from a stats perspective, I've applied to thousands of postings. I would say I'm probably at around 4 to 5, with plenty of, repeats of jobs that have been posted. I've had approximately 20 to 25 interviews. I made it to finals with 2 companies. One ghosted completely. The
Oh, man.
other, I had been told that an offer was being drafted, and then didn't find out for another probably 5 weeks that they had actually passed on me. And that's, not including all of the recruitment processes that I've been in where there's been a pretty huge amount of ghosting as well. So definitely seems different than what I'm used to or how I run my recruitment desk. And it's hard, I think, in the community, especially kind of globally where this is happening to people, to not feel discouraged by getting rejection emails or just never hearing from a company.
Yeah.
I think, feedback or at least closing the loop is important in some way. So it's been interesting, but it's part of the process. And if you want a job, you gotta be involved.
So
That's for sure.
ghosting people was probably not one of your hiring practices. Is that right?
No, we all, listen, everybody makes a mistake. We all drop the ball sometimes, and forgotten to, share feedback with a candidate. But if I got an email from someone saying, hey, Jamie, haven't heard from you in a while, just wanted to check in. Unless I was doing something, more pertinent or more important or in the agency world, closer to the dollar. I would always, as soon as I was kind of done with the function I was in the moment, I would answer that email and share whatever feedback I have, or updates. A no update is still an update. So, better to be communicative than not. But yeah, definitely something that I haven't been used to.
No, it's not even Halloween yet. But I would say a recruiter should never wear a ghost costume. It's just not. But man, that is crazy. I am blown away that you've had to apply to literally thousands of jobs. That is
Unreal.
Yeah, unreal.
Yeah. When I calculated that the first time, actually, which was around the first big LinkedIn post that I had shared, which I guess the last time I checked has over 1.5 million unique views. I was just kind of going through LinkedIn. I knew that they show 10 jobs a page, and I had to go back 12 pages, and that was a month and a half, 2 months in. And I've kept that cadence pretty high still. So it's been a lot of, sending applications for sure.
I'm sure other people can relate to that are listening today. So let's talk a little bit about, what could be improved. We're not alone. There are a lot of people that are, applying to lots of jobs, and lots of recruiters that are also dealing with getting an abnormal flood of applicants. So let's talk about, what are your top 5 things, like let's say 5 recommendations that companies can do differently to improve the applicant experience in today's kind of unique labor market?
Yeah. And I mean, shout out to all of these recruiters who are dealing with, postings that have 1,000 applicants within 24 hours. It's a lot, but there are ways to make the process better, I think, for everyone. I would say first things first, a must is having accurate, consistent, legally compliant job postings, preferably including what the recruiting or hiring process looks like, kind of just a little outline in there, and a true good faith salary range. I'm sure you guys have seen this. We all have, where something says, you're making 50 to 500K a year. And that's just not there's no world in which that range is, a real expectation. And I think that's really important. I would also say making the application process easy and accessible. As a recruiter, I've only had one position where I've really used cover letters to make a decision. And that was for one role in particular. So no cover letters, do not require references in an application. You should not be reaching out to references until you're prepared to make an offer. Optimize your ATS Workday to not have applicants filling out information that's in their resume. That takes a lot of time. It can also be very ableist, especially in a world where people have disabilities, and it can be harder for them to get through these applications. I would say another big thing for me is a quick and timely interview process with no more than 4 to 5 rounds at a push for a full-time role and 2 to 3 max for contract roles. And also ensuring that the cadence between them is quick. So you're not waiting over a week for the next round to be scheduled. That's something that recruiters have to set expectations with their hiring teams, which is another one of my kind of quick tips of these little things that can have a huge return on investment. I would say my fourth is sending rejection and update emails. When you're doing this, use the company's talent at insert company URL here. Ideally, don't use your personal email because one, you will definitely get people asking why they weren't moved forward. And for an application, you don't have time to give that feedback. But also, it can get people thinking that they are going to be selected for an interview if they see that they're being connected with an actual person at the company. And the biggest one in this kind of sending updates, do not reject candidates who have been in the interview process in any capacity, certainly not at a final. If they've had interviews, give feedback. If they have made it to a final and are not selected, give feedback. This is an opportunity to create, even if you don't hire this person, an ambassador for your company. When people have bad experiences, they share them. When people have good experiences, they share them. Close the loop. It's really important. And then the fifth, and probably one of the most important, not that these all aren't, is coaching and training hiring teams before interviews begin, including the legal compliance pieces. Really have those clear expectations regarding interview feedback, and ideally at least one interviewer backup for each round if possible. Obviously, you can't really have one for a CEO or a VP who doesn't have a counterpart, but making sure that the hiring team on your end is completely prepared, ready to go. You're not going to have candidates be ghosted on an interview or have to reschedule them 1,000 times or worry about, an interviewer asking a question that maybe could get the company in some legal hot water. I think that is huge and something that is a part of the recruiter's responsibilities, truly. But all of these kind of 5 points to say, there are some really easy and, quick ways to create a much better experience that isn't just only for the candidate, but it's for the hiring team too. Hiring managers don't want to wait 2 months to hire people. And, if you can turn candidates you don't select into great ambassadors, you're just going to get more great talent out of that. So, little things that will have a huge impact and return on your time that can be, really kind of, experience changing for people.
Thank you so much. I think those are really great tips. So on one side, we have some really simple things that we can implement very easily, just avoiding redundancies, not asking for the same thing over and over, and making your hiring process very accessible, especially people using phones these days. It needs to be very accessible on mobile devices. And then, I loved how you said, just don't ask for references till you actually need them. And sometimes they forget what they ask for and then they ask for them again. And it's like, well, I already provided that, right? And that can be frustrating as an applicant. But then there's also maybe some things that may take some more time, like really standardizing your procedures so that it's the same and so that you just go through that process as the recruiter or as those people doing the interviews. And then making those expectations very clear to those who are putting in their applications or being interviewed of what the whole process is going to look like, so that they have an expectation on the timeline, on if they should be expecting a response back or feedback. And I think, like you said, providing that feedback is very helpful when they've at least done an interview. So
yeah, I think expectation setting is a really huge part of this on the candidate side and on the hiring side. If in my last position, I kind of built out and created a full talent acquisition infrastructure playbook, SLA, supporting documentation, all of it for my last employer. And the expectation then we had to kind of, when we were implementing this, reset with hiring managers and hiring teams is, At a push, you get 48 hours to submit feedback. We really want it within 24 because it holds up the hiring process. It holds up sharing information with candidates. But I think a lot of recruiting, it's about setting expectations and really trying to kind of keep to them. We all have the best of intentions, I think, but sometimes things happen. And, I, as a candidate, would much rather get a no update email from a recruiter than not hear anything or have to chase them. So just, little things that can make the process better, especially as someone on the other side. It's definitely a different market out there. And this is coming from someone who, when I was employed, I would tell candidates all the time how much I hated looking for a job too. I get it. And that could not be more true now. But I think it's important to consider, the impact that all of these things have, especially when I'll never kind of that's one of my big sticking points as a recruiter is you have an opportunity with every person you speak with to create either a great ambassador for your company or one that is not going to be so helpful with your company's reputation, especially with hiring.
That actually brings me to my next question, that perspective that you're sharing. And I want to just say, I think the perspective you have by being on both sides is going to help you be a better recruiter and has helped you be a better recruiter. And maybe some have not had that experience where they've gone months, experiencing some negative interactions through that process. So tell me from your experience, how does a better applicant experience affect a company upon either hiring or passing on a candidate? So you touched on it, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, no, I actually think something that a lot of people don't consider is that having a really concise candidate experience and also positive candidate experience also does help with retention ultimately. If you're creating a great experience for candidates, for employees, or hiring teams, that's one thing that somebody can't look at and say, well, this is a reason I should leave. Is, hey, listen, like I got through, but I didn't have a great experience getting in. That's something that, people don't think about. The effect that, candidate experience has on attrition. And also, being able to refill, roles should someone leave, backfills, or, if you're considering having candidates boomerang back. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but Meta has posted a handful of TA roles. And it's honestly surprising that they would post them considering they could just call employees get laid off. It would look, and also objectively, it would look better if they were wanting to boomerang people back. So even that is, companies that have had layoffs, if you had good people, which I'm sure a lot of great people were laid off, call them first. Yeah. Maybe don't post the role. If you just went through a huge round of layoffs in the spring. So I think there, is a lot about the hiring process that has an impact on the full employee life cycle that is not considered enough.
Oh, I think you bring up a great point. Boomerang employees statistically are more engaged because they've gone somewhere else. They've seen what it's like, and they know the difference. They've lived that comparison. And Aaron Ian in the book Work Inspired talks a little bit more about that in depth. So I love that you brought that up. One other thing I wanted to hit on that you mentioned, Jamie, was the effect that your applicant experience has on everyone who's not hired. So a few years ago, Virgin Mobile, they did a research study. I don't know if you've heard about this, but they surveyed a whole bunch of their applicants that were not hired and found a couple key things. About 20% of the people who'd applied for jobs were customers of theirs. And they also found that there was a percentage of the people that were customers, upon not receiving the job, terminated their service with Virgin Mobile. And so they saw there was an actual revenue impact on the inferior experience they were providing to job applicants to their bottom line. And so sometimes, you can't connect the dots that specifically, but I've seen this, and when I was over employee experience at a large manufacturing company, we very much engineered our application experience around the people who did not get the job because we were averaging about 100 applications per post. So we knew, 99% of those people weren't getting the job. We
Yeah.
wanted to keep them engaged in case they wanted to apply again, but we didn't want them to poison the talent pool here. So we gave every person a pillow that interviewed with us a nice gift because it was something that we made. We
Yeah.
also proactively asked for feedback directly on Glassdoor. Glassdoor allows you to leave a rating and review of the interview experience. So for everyone listening, if you've ever had a positive or negative interviewing experience, you can rate that specifically, that element of experience, on the company's page on Glassdoor. So wanted to add that little tidbit that it really matters for those people. And since we have so many people applying, like right now, that should be considered way more than it typically is because of the flood of talent that's out there applying right now.
Oh yeah, I was actually interacting on a LinkedIn post a couple of days ago. This is kind of I think we've all seen this. There are like recruiter influencers on LinkedIn, which I don't know that I would call myself based on views, but this recruiter works for one of the big defense contractors and said that she used obviously industry specific phrasing, but that she screens all of the candidates who apply to her jobs. Now, there is a debate on whether a screen means a screening phone call or application review. I prefer to kind of be as specific as possible. So she meant application review for sure, but was having a discussion about this and how there's no possible way for a recruiter to reach out with specific feedback to every applicant. That's what the automated emails are for. Set them up. Another little tip, don't schedule them to send at midnight ever. Schedule them during working hours during the week. I got one, it was like Saturday going into Sunday, like at 12:32 a.m. I know that you weren't looking at my resume then. There's no way.
Yeah.
So schedule them, in kind of, if you're in the US, like during, a block of like US working hours. But I think that that's something that on the applicant side needs a little bit of a temperature check and expectation reset. You're almost never going to get tailored feedback if you don't make it past the application round. Any round past that, you should be getting specific feedback for if you're, removed from the process or no longer under consideration. But I think, companies are going to start seeing more and more that a negative process on the candidate side can really have an impact on their bottom line. And you don't know who people know or what positions are going to end up in. I actually, during lockdown, I had been interviewing with a large California-based tool like supply company. Had gotten to finals and was told that unfortunately I didn't get the role, but was specifically told that it was because they found someone who had more corporate kind of generalist experience than I did. The only problem with that was I knew the person who they hired. We worked together and she had less experience than I did, but her significant other worked at the company. Be honest with the feedback to a point. Obviously, there are certain things you don't necessarily want to put in an email, but it was not like we were coming out of the same company. And I knew this person personally. And it really did affect my opinion of the company. And I was reached out to, I think, a year after that, and was very transparent with the recruiter who reached out and said, listen, I appreciate the outreach, but I had a really negative candidate experience at the end with you guys. And I would just advise that maybe you don't take that, route again. So it's, there's a lot that you can lose by having, a not experience focused process. And there's so much more to gain. It can be the deciding factor in why somebody takes a role. This is your first impression as a company to this candidate. So, I think there's a real, thought in kind of the working world that a company's doing you some big favor by hiring you. And they're not. They're getting something out of it. You're providing a service. They're paying you for it, but you need to be happy with them too. And I think as younger generations are getting more into power positions, that is shifting. I think we're seeing, especially with loads of startups, how these companies are really trying to make not only the company a great place to work, but the candidate experience better as well.
Yeah, I love how you touch on, it's not just about the person you're hiring, but that one is honestly huge. Make sure their applicant experience is really good because they're going to work for you. And then to all those who don't, they can become ambassadors for you. They can become a word of mouth, either positive or negative. And so just be nice, be honest, be open, set the proper expectations so that everyone leaves feeling good. You can be on both sides and wish that for the other person. So thank you so much, Jamie. Your wealth of information is amazing, so helpful to recruiters, and I think so motivational for those who are looking for a job. So if you're looking to hire an expert recruiter with in-depth knowledge of the applicant experience, connect with Jamie on LinkedIn. And to keep your company culture insights current and fresh, make sure to follow the Culture Prophet on LinkedIn and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Culture Prophet podcast and for being a part of our journey to prove that putting people first is best for business.
Today's episode was sponsored by Mobrium.
Want to get more employee reviews and streamline your employer reputation? Visit Mobrium.com.
Now go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.